Hey guys, I'm Katie from the blog Cast Iron Recipes, and today I'm going to take you along as we do some winter cooking. Today we're going to make things like a Dutch oven bread, and we're going to test out a chicken recipe cooked on the wood stove, because the best time to prepare for losing electricity is when you still have it, so you can make some adjustments if you need to. So we're going to cook on the wood stove today and probably do a little something for a dessert. Not quite sure yet, but you can follow along and we'll get there when we get there. One of the things I love about this recipe is that it's super easy to make. It does take a while, as does any bread recipe, but it's really easy and it'll make a very large loaf. So we're gonna start by adding about 4 cups of flour, and I do this in my big stand mixer bowl because it's one of the largest bowls I have. So we'll do about 4 cups added right in there. We're going to do a packet of yeast. And if you have one of the jars, it's about 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast. Then we're going to add about a teaspoon to a teaspoon and a half of salt. And then we're going to add 2 cups of warm water and use a wooden spoon, get a handle on it here, to just mix everything up, and it's going to turn into kind of a shaggy dough. You certainly can use a dough hook in the stand mixer, but one of the things about this dough is that you don't have to knead it. This is a no-knead dough. You really just want to mix things, mix them well, so however that works best for you. Using a spoon, use your hands, just get it nice and incorporated. Make sure there's no dry spots. It'll be nice and sticky and shaggy like this, and yes, it will certainly stick to your fingers and your utensils. That's quite all right. We don't need this to be a firm, clean dough like when you make white bread. It's supposed to be a bit on the sticky side. Now you're just going to take some oil, and I just spray the top, and then we're going to flip it over. Spray this side, spray the inside of the bowl, and then we're going to cover it with plastic wrap. Now that we've got it covered, we're going to place it in a warm area of the house for about an hour to 2 hours until it doubles in size. The kids aren't here today, so I can stick this just in front of the wood stove. We don't want to get it too close because I don't want it to cook, but we can put it in front of the wood stove with it and not risk any little hands getting into it. So I found some gnocchi that we had in the pantry, and today's Dutch oven chicken dish that we're doing is kind of going to be things that you can just throw together. So we're going to treat the wood stove the same way you would treat a recipe in a slow cooker. So we're going to do a copycat Olive Garden chicken gnocchi soup on the wood stove and see how that comes out. We're going to start by chopping our vegetables, and we have some really delicious homegrown carrots. Got store-bought celery, homegrown onion. Really, when you lose power, or if you're living off grid, anything like that, you're really going to want to use what you have on hand. So this is, I think it's gonna turn out pretty good, and I'm pretty excited to have a few recipes that we can really lean on when we lose power, because living in Maine, we lose power quite often with all the snow. Most wood stoves run at about 250. You can always open it up to get it a little hotter. Ours is at about 350 right now, and Travis just added some more wood to the wood stove to really keep it going. So I think we'll be okay at about 350. I always check it with my instant thermometer. I've got a kind of a thermal one that's just like a little ray gun, and I use that outdoors when we're cooking over the fire as well. So it's super handy to have on hand when you need to find out the surface temperature or something. But one of the tips I would have here is to make sure that you're cutting everything about the same size, and maybe even a little smaller than you normally would, just so cooking at that low temp you can still get everything cooked evenly and make sure everything browns as it needs to brown and whatnot. We don't want to have raw veggies or raw chicken in our soup. So I've got all of our veggies here in the Dutch oven, and I've got our scraps set to the side so I can give them to the chickens later. And we're gonna add some fresh herbs to this as well, and get some oil in it and get it going on the wood stove. Now I'm gonna wait to get the garlic in, because we are using fresh garlic, and if you cook fresh garlic at too low of a temperature, it really doesn't cook right, and it'll kind of pick up the metallic taste of the Dutch oven, and it turns things green. I don't know, it's a little weird. That's science for you. So I'm gonna make sure that this all gets nice and sauteed first before adding in the garlic. I want to make sure that our wood stove is really at a good temperature for it. So adding in the herbs, I'll add in a little bit of salt and pepper and some avocado oil or some olive oil. We can use olive oil today because we're not cooking at such a high heat. So I've got some thyme in here. I'm gonna add in some dried rosemary that we pulled from the garden this past fall. I still have a bunch out there, even though we've got snow on the ground. It's probably something I should pick sooner rather than later. You can use some sea salt, about a teaspoon. The chicken stock that we're using today is unsalted, so we're gonna start with a teaspoon, see how that goes, and we can always add more later, but of course we can't take it out. I'm gonna add in about a half a teaspoon of pepper and stew It's probably a couple tablespoons or so of the olive oil, not quite a quarter of a cup. I don't want to drown it in here. We've got everything in here. Just gonna give it a nice toss before we pop it onto the wood stove. Try and make sure that everything is nicely coated in the olive oil so that everything kind of cooks a little more evenly. You could create a sachet or a bundle with the thyme. I personally don't mind picking out the stems, but if you want to make it a little easier on yourself and keep them until the very end, you could use some butcher twine to tie those up. All right, let's get it on the wood stove. Got the wood stove going, nice and hot. You can see our bread is sitting in front of it. We are cranking up there. Okay, good to know. And of course you can also look, there's a little dial in the back there. We can close this a little bit and kind of adjust the heat, but we usually keep this thing pretty rip-roaring anyhow. So I've got it right there on top of the wood stove. And of course you want to be super careful when working around the wood stove. While the vegetables are starting to cook on the wood stove, I'm going to start by slicing the chicken up. We've got about, probably 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds of chicken breasts here, and I'm just going to cut them into bite-sized pieces and put them to the side until we're ready to add them to the Dutch oven. Okay, so our dough has about doubled in size, and it looks kind of like sourdough on the top. It's really bubbly and very, very sticky, and that's okay. That's great. That's what we want. So what we're gonna do now is take about, I don't know, 1/4 cup or so of flour. You want, because this is a really sticky dough, you want your countertop to be nice and floured for this. I'm gonna dump it out. Okay, all that extra goodness in there. If you have some sort of scraper, whether it's plastic or metal, or you can just use your hands, that's totally fine too. But we're going to kind of shape this and lump it onto itself. But we want to handle it minimally so that we keep all these nice air pockets in it. So we're just gonna kind of fold it up on itself. Okay. I'm not any master baker, guys, so my techniques are likely not that of, you know, someone that does this all the time. Okay. So we're just getting it nice and round, just kind of shaping it. It really didn't need much because it was already that shape coming out of the bowl. So I'm just going to let it sit there for a little bit. I'm going to cover it with just some plastic wrap. It might kind of get a little bit bigger, but it's not gonna get doubled in size, because what we're gonna do now is we are going to preheat the oven to 450, and we're gonna stick our Dutch oven in there so that it gets nice and hot. And so that's gonna take about a half an hour, because you want to make sure that the Dutch oven is the same temperature as the oven before we put in our bread. So it's been about 20 minutes and I've been stirring it off and on. Had the lid on but cracked. Oh, look at all that steam. Okay, so carrots, vegetables, everything's nice and tender. Chicken is cooked beautifully. So now we're gonna add in a full box of chicken stock. We're gonna add in our gnocchi. Give it a good stir. We'll put the lid back on. We're gonna put it on tightly this time. You don't want a lot of steam to escape now. And we'll put it back on the wood stove. Okay, so this next part is a little tricky. So we are moving right along with our bread, and make sure you got your oven mitts on. We're gonna take it out of the oven. It's been preheating at 450. Okay. We're gonna take some parchment paper. Just kind of tuck it in there. Don't touch the sides of your Dutch oven. And we're going to take our bread and just gently drop it down in. Just encourage it to spread out a little bit, but of course as it bakes it's going to spread out some. Now we're going to take a serrated knife, and this is totally optional. We're going to take our serrated knife here and just cut down into the bread so that we get a really nice, look. It's going to all puff up when it's done, and just giving it a nice cut or two into the dough. Just going to help give it some texture and a little bit of a different look. So here it is. This is what it looks like before it's going into the oven. We're going to cover it with the cover and pop it back in for about 35 to 45 minutes. So this has been boiling and simmering away for a bit. That gnocchi looks to be nice and cooked. So we're gonna add in about 2 cups of spinach, fresh spinach. If you only have frozen, of course you can use that. Just make sure to drain it well. That's going to cook down and shrink quite a bit, and this is bubbling hot. Like I said, our wood stove is running a bit high, so if yours is lower, you're gonna need to cover this and let it simmer away on the wood stove for a bit longer. Mine is cooking right down, and we're gonna add a little bit of heavy cream. You can use half and half or milk. This is what's gonna give it that beautiful creaminess that you're used to seeing from this recipe at Olive Garden. Add a little bit more. And I am not going to put it back on the wood stove at this point, again, because of how hot ours is right now. I am just going to put the lid on, leave it cracked a little bit, and give it about 5 minutes, and then we'll serve it up. Okay, so one thing you have to have when the power is out, and sometimes it's out for days and people get a little cranky, is something sweet. So we are going to do a skillet cookie. We're going to do a personalized skillet cookie. So I started off with my small, my mini skillet, and I added 4 tablespoons of butter and put it right on top of the wood stove and got that melting. Now we're gonna add our other ingredients and get this going. Okay, so I added the butter to a bowl. I'm gonna add a couple tablespoons of brown sugar. Then we're gonna add a couple tablespoons of regular sugar. And then we're just gonna mix it with a spoon. Again, I'm doing this as if we don't have power, so I'm not gonna have those stand mixers or handheld mixers, anything like that. Check the temperature, make sure that it's not hot still from being on the wood stove. We're gonna add in an egg. Okay, give that a stir. You can use a whisk for this too, but again, if the power is out, we want to use as minimal items as possible, because you're going to have to heat up the water on the wood stove and use that to hand wash things. So I'm just going to stick with the spoon. Okay, so now we're going to add in a little bit of vanilla extract. This is homemade as well. I like making homemade vanilla extract because you can make so much more, and it's super cost effective that way. Okay, and then we're gonna add in our flour. We're gonna add in just a touch. We're gonna add in just a touch of baking soda right on top of the flour so that it's not into the liquid yet. And we're gonna add in a little bit of salt. We'll give this a stir until it's combined, and then we can add in our chocolate chips or any other kind of candy. If you have some leftover Halloween candy, or if you like peanut butter, if you have peanut butter chips or chocolate chunks, whatever it is. This is the cookie dough, so this is the base for it, and you can really just add whatever you want into it. All right, so I have a bunch of actual chocolate chips, so we're just gonna add a good helping of it. It's probably about a half a cup. You may need to kind of fold this in. And grab a spoon to help clean this. Of course, you could use a plastic spoon if the power is out. Just want to make sure we get all of that dough. Okay, so we've got all of our cookie dough right here, and now we're going to put it back into the skillet that we melted the butter in. So it'll be nice and greased and make just the cookie come out so much easier once we go to eat it. So remember, the skillet is still hot because this came together just super quickly. Add this all right into one mini skillet. Remember, this is still hot, so just be careful. Okay, it's all in there. Now let's go add it to the wood stove. So you can add this to an oven and bake it at 350, but we're doing it on the wood stove today. We're gonna pop it up here. I may end up adding something underneath it. You can use mason jar lid rings right under it to prop it up a bit because our wood stove is running real hot right now, but we're gonna see how this does. So that took about 40 minutes on the wood stove, and it was cranking when I put it on, so you can see around the edge there is a little darker. You know, if you regulated the wood stove a bit better than I did, it wouldn't come out as dark around the center. And this looks like it's not done, but it is. I checked it with the toothpick and it came out clean. So this is going to be, the edge is going to be more for those that like kind of that crunchy, think of like the thin chocolate chip cookies. The inside is going to be a little more cakey. It's going to be a little softer. Either way, it's going to be delicious with ice cream. So the bread has been in here for about 30 minutes. I'm not even gonna take it out. Just going to lift the cover and pop it back in there to brown and finish. Okay, so the bread just came out of the oven. Doesn't that look gorgeous? I'm gonna get it out and get it cooling on a wire rack before we cut into it. Thanks for joining me here today in the cast iron kitchen and on our homestead. Hope you got some new ideas for some delicious recipes that you can try whether you have electricity or not. If you like these recipes, you can find these recipes and more on castironrecipes.com, as well as a link down in the description box. Now, if you like videos like this, go ahead and hit the thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe. Every week I'm going to be bringing you 2 new videos that cover recipes and our homesteading life and just more self-sustaining, kind of responsible living. Okay, so we're gonna kind of go back to our roots here. So I'll see you in the next video. Be blessed and happy eating.